Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
We want to point out a stark reality of the gun debate. Despite mass demonstrations for gun control, of course, like the March for Our Lives and multiple mass shootings this past year, the NRA has reached a fundraising record. The gun lobby raised $2.4 million in March, the highest in 15 years. Nearly $2 million of that came from small donors who gave less than $200 each. So remember that all of those small donors who gave less than $200 each one of them has a right to vote. And I assure you, they go out there and do it. So
they're going to send a $200 check to the NRA. They're going to vote.
So it's not to say that we're not inspired and excited by all of these kids standing up and marching. But when we hear things like, look how many Instagram followers and Twitter followers they have, that doesn't matter.
That's real dollars going to the NRA.
Has real dollars, and that's action.
So we shouldn't kid ourselves about that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Stacy on the Right here on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. So good to be with you. Guess what? She's right. Stephanie Ruhle is right. I know you guys are watching pigs fly into your windshields and your windows around your house, and you're thinking, what's happening? Did I just hear Stacy say Stephanie Ruhle is right? Yeah, you did. And guess what? She's right when she says that the NRA has the small donors, and we have the people who are motivated and willing to step out with small donations to support something that's integral to how they live here in America. Second Amendment, and the right to defend one's person. That's all it's about. So it's not about anything more than that for people who are literally just supporting an organization that protects the rights. It's not about the NRA giving any rights. It's not about any of that. It's just about members like myself, regular people saying, oh, wow, thank you so much for letting us know that we need to step up and put a little something extra in the pot for the NRA, because we need to strengthen the organization, because we need to make sure that we don't let 17-year-olds dictate public policy. And that's really all this is. I know David Hogg has recently turned 18, but until he's willing to deal on all issues as an adult, he's still really a child, still living with his parents, still living off of their largesse, not taking care of himself, not paying bills, not doing anything that would make him someone that adults should address. And so while I know he has feelings and opinions, because we all do, this conversation is better had between the adults. And I think what she just said there was really important. She just recognized that it's not regular run-of-the-mill, Ms. America and Mr. America, Mr. Middle of the country, Mr. Flyover country, Miss, Midwest. Those people are not on Twitter. They're not on Facebook. They're not doing a lot of watching of the different channels. But what they are doing is when they realize that something they believe in is under attack, they're stepping up where it counts. And she's right. Every one of those donations represents votes. Those votes are donations. Those donations are votes. They're representative. So have all the marches you want. Gather wherever you want. Have your own hashtag. But we're having our own moment, and it's pocketbook, wallet, bank account to the organization that we support for this issue. And that's real. All right, welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about Colbert, who is a comedian who, often wades into the political sphere. He's now doing some things that I'm not surprised, but it's really, really frightening, the level of ownership that people on the left feel they have over blacks and their opinions and their votes. And so we're watching him lead the charge to destroy a Trump lovin' Kanye West. So that's one of the biggest stories that's happened over the past 24 hours since we were on the air, is that Kanye West came out swinging on Twitter saying how much he loves Donald Trump and how they both share dragon energy, whatever that means. And we also are going to speak second hour with Robert VerBruggen of National Review. He's going to come on and discuss a few things with us. Actually, that's first hour. We're going to speak with him about the spending and how the cuts never happen. We're always promised cuts, but we never get them, and what the solution is. And he believes it's federalism. So I'm really excited about speaking to him. And that's actually this hour. We're going to speak with him in the next segment. So let's listen to Stephen Colbert. He feels like it's appropriate to launch an attack on Kanye West for his tweets from yesterday. So I want you to know what was tweeted, but first I want you to hear what happens if you even slightly step away from what is approved by the DNC and Hillary Clinton and everybody on the left, and you're black, they move quickly to not just shut you down, but to question your mental fitness and to make you the issue. It's number 8.
Okay, you could have stopped at 10 a.m. this morning with, I'm nice at ping pong. Quick follow-up. Have you been hanging out with Dr. Ronnie Jackson? But then things took an even stupider turn because Donald Trump actually responded to Kanye. I assume because an alarm went off in the White House that someone on Twitter was being crazier than him. Trump tweeted, "Thank you, Kanye. Very cool." Yes, it is a total bro fest. Look for their new album, Yeezy and Sleazy. So, congratulations. Congratulations to President Donald Trump on securing the coveted Kanye endorsement. That is not easy to get. Right now, it's just you and Bill Cosby innocence. We'll be right back with
And so what's the point of what he did? Obviously, the point is to get people to laugh. But remember, Kanye West has been on Colbert before. There's no space between them. When Kanye West said that George Bush didn't care about black people during the Katrina aftermath, everybody on the left was golf clapping him and patting him on the back and, hey, you're on the team. You're doing a good job. Attack those nasty, evil Republicans and let everybody in America know who your enemy is. Your enemy is any white man who's a Republican, any black woman who's a Republican. And that happened. This isn't something that's made up. It's not our imagination. This happened. So when it was Kanye against a Republican, he wasn't crazy. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't dumb. He was on point. He was on message. He was one of them. But yesterday, Kanye West, and it was kind of fascinating to watch because you just, you know how it is when you're just minding your own business and then you start getting notifications because people are texting you and you're like, I wonder what's going on. And so you look and you're like, could this be real? I actually thought that we were all collectively as people on Twitter, however many millions there are on Twitter, that we were being punked. And so when I was looking at that, I'm like, okay. I mean, just calm down a little bit. Calm down. So you see this text, it's a tweet from Kanye West. And he says, first he says, I like the way Candace Owens thinks. So she's the media director or some kind of coalitions director for Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's collegiate organization that has there's just gazillion people in that thing across college campuses around the country. And then she was diversity and minority outreach director. And now she's just she's been promoted. And so she's been doing a fantastic job of articulating conservative ideals. She's said a lot of things that many of us who are conservatives have said before. We've all said that black people should be independent thinkers and that the Democrats aren't doing anything for us and that the victimization attitude does not win in life. You can't win in life if you think you're a victim. But it's really unique to hear it coming out of someone as young as she is in her early 20s. She has a great education. She used to work in the financial market. And it's been fun to watch her videos spin up, go viral, and now she's everywhere. She's on Fox News. She's, you name it. She's speaking at conferences, and she's a huge presence on Twitter and Instagram and all of that, all as a part of her work for Turning Point USA. So he says he likes the way she thinks. Okay. All right. So he's got 27 million Twitter followers. So when he says he likes the way someone thinks, that's a huge segment of that demographic that just recently heard from him that they need to pay attention to this person, this new face on the scene, Candace Owens. So then he goes from I like the way she thinks to tweeting about Donald Trump. So the first thing that happens after he tweets that he likes Donald Trump, or he likes the way Candace Owens thinks, then Chance the Rapper says, Black people don't have to be Democrats. Now, I know if you're listening to this and you're like me, you have teenage kids, maybe your kids have heard Chance the Rapper. I know I never have. I knew he was a person. I've heard his name before, but I've never heard one iota of his music. Or if I have, I didn't know it was him. But he's huge too. Huge. So he says, Black people don't have to be Democrats. This is a tweet. So people are losing their minds. Conservatives are jumping on board. Yes, it's finally happening. The exodus of Blacks from the Democrats. Just because a person with 27 million Twitter followers says they're leaving or they believe you can be whatever political party you want doesn't mean every follower is leaving. So I think it's a bit premature to say, there's some kind of groundswell of a movement. But it is something significant to see someone who's a leader and a well-respected kind of entertainment person say something like this. So then you've got a cartoon by Ben Garrison. And in the cartoon, it's Candace Owens and Kanye West, and they're driving a car that's shaped like a red pill. The car's labeled red pill, and the thought police with a hat, it's a police officer on a motorcycle with a hat that says the left. He says, I pulled you over for driving while conservative, and both of them look ticked off, and they're in the suburbs because these are suburban Blacks, right? So there's a lot of imagery and messaging within this cartoon. So that comes out. Then you have Kanye West tweeting out, Obama was in office for 8 years and nothing in Chicago changed. And oh my goodness, burn it down. Now it's on because Kanye West isn't just saying nice things about Candace Owens. He's saying that someone who is the savior of Blacks in America, Barack Obama, he didn't do as well as he should have. That's that's where people start talking about they're gonna take off their shoes and, put some Vaseline on their cheeks and let's get it on. It's fight time. So then Sean Combs, otherwise known as P. Diddy, or now simply Diddy, at Diddy on Twitter, tweets out, the U.S. has lost over 5 million manufacturing jobs since 2000. Think we can do better? Make a video for a contest from at UAW. $5,000 prizes. Contest closes tomorrow, April 25th at noon Eastern. Details are here. So people start retweeting that and saying, hashtag stay woke. And then Kanye says he and the president are basically the same guy. And George Bush rounds it all out. Former President George Bush tweets Kanye West. Kanye West does not care about Black people. And the crowd went wild. That's what's going on. And that's why you hear Colbert and the rest will follow trying to take Kanye West out. It's time for him to go. He's got to be banished from the herd because he's thinking for himself. When we get back, we'll have more for you here on Stacey on the Right. Stay there.
Hi, this is Kirk Cameron, and I am honored to be partnering with the Ministry of Preborn and American Family Radio to help moms choose life.
Actor Kirk Cameron supports Preborn.
My 4 oldest children were adopted. That is because of caring and compassionate people who help those young mothers choose life. My wife is an adopted child, and her birth mother chose life for her. If it weren't for those caring individuals that help those young moms value the sacredness of life, I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my 4 adopted children, and the 2 natural-born children that we have wouldn't exist either. My whole family is here because of people that are involved with ministries like Preborn.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a legacy moment. Not too long ago, a friend of mine and his wife went to Chicago to enjoy a long weekend. Now, this friend and I share something in common. We both love barbecue. So I told him about a barbecue restaurant he just had to check out. I really sold him about the place, so when he returned from Chicago, I asked him about the restaurant. He said, to my disappointment, we went there with our mouths watering for that great barbecue, but they must have had a change of ownership or management or something because the food was awful. I guess what he tasted was not as good as he expected. Life can be like that too, can't it? What we're served is not as good as what we expect. We keep trying stuff, this lifestyle, this job, this career, this relationship, and we have these great expectations, only to realize that we still lie down at night with emptiness in our souls. Listen to this great invitation in Psalm 34, verses 8 through 10. "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. How blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, you his saints, for to those who fear him there is no want. The young lions do lack and suffer hunger, but they who seek the Lord shall not be in want of any good thing." You know what? This invitation is as good as it sounds. God is delightfully much more than you are asking for, and all you'll ever need. God says, hey, come here, come taste. He is satisfying, permanent, fulfilling. Here's what I want you to remember and do today. Take God up on his invitation. Turn away from your menu, the junk food you've been trying. Give your heart and life to him, and he will satisfy your soul.
More information about the ministry of Crawford Loritz can be found online at livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to give a shout out to the Thrive STL family. We had a fantastic luncheon today, and I got to open in prayer and then also give a few remarks. I want to say happy birthday to Mary, one of the founders of the Pregnancy Resource Center here in St. Louis, which is now the Thrive Nation, which is spreading across the country. And happy birthday to Bridget Van Means, good friend and really role model for all of us out there who are swinging our swords on behalf of causes that we feel are biblically based and doing the work that we feel like God has given us to do. I also want to say thanks to the production, everybody who's in production over at American Family Radio and that does all of the good stuff that makes these shows possible. I'm really grateful, and I'm glad to be a part of American Family and Urban Family Talk. And head over to urbanfamilytalk.com and register for our conference, which is this fall. It's coming up. All the information is there, and the discount is there for a few more days, and then we go to full price. So, I mean, you can get in and register right now for a discount, which is great. So urbanfamilytalk.com, head over there and check that out. We're going to really enjoy getting together in Tupelo at the end of the summer and getting to meet a whole bunch of people and just say hi and, also get some really great content on marriage and family. And so right now it's my pleasure to welcome our guest, Robert VerBruggen, Deputy Managing Editor of National Review. Thank you so much for coming on today, Robert.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I'm one of those people who really wants to see spending cuts. Whenever I have this, we just got through this. Whenever it's tax season, I'm in a perpetual state of rage. It's not the crazy rage that you see with postal workers. It's the under the surface boiling rage because I'm so angry at how much we pay in tax. And I can remember a time when my husband and I were just getting started. We were newlyweds and we didn't even have any kids yet. And we would dream of the day where we could earn a certain amount of money. And it never occurred to us that by the time we got there, we'd be paying more in tax than we were making back then on a yearly basis. And so that's what's happened to us. And I'm grateful for roads and bridges, and I'm perfectly willing to contribute to that. But what I see us doing now is every pet project from every state around the country is now currently fully funded in addition to our entitlements. And it leaves us in a place where we can never have true tax cuts, true spending reform, because everybody's got their hand in the till and no one's willing to pull out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, that's and one of the things I've been saying kind of throughout my career is that I absolutely agree with that, and I'm a conservative, and I want to see spending cut, and I want to see the government shrunk. But one thing I think, just realistically speaking, is that when you look through the federal budget, most of it is the entitlements. It's not the roads and bridges or even the frivolous projects. Most of what we're spending are the entitlements that are very popular. So that's sort of the rub there, and what's very difficult to cut because everybody loves their Social Security and Medicare.
Mm. Yeah, and so whenever we talk about that, let's be real, Robert. You bring up cutting what are called entitlements, but people pay into them. The first argument that you have is people will say, well, first of all, this isn't an entitlement. I paid into it. We're all paying into it, so we're all a part of funding it. But since it's been emptied out, right, Robert, whoever we want to blame for it, I tend to go with the history, and it was the Democrats who emptied out the trust fund. Now that it's empty and we're going on a basically robbing Peter to pay Paul basis. How can we reform that? And people aren't even willing to listen anymore.
Well, I mean, I think what's actually going to happen is that we're going to have a crisis decades down the road, and we're going to be forced into sort of a combination of cutting the entitlements and raising taxes. I think that's almost certainly what's going to happen, because I don't see us getting it under control before that point.
And then what does that look like? I would love it if people could really have a mental picture of when you say raising taxes, we just got a teensy little tax cut. I mean, it was just a sliver. The business side got a really good chunk off, but on the personal side, we just got the very teensiest of cuts, and everyone's happy with it. But for me, I feel like nothing happened, and I'm not so sure that anything more can happen. So the first thing that would happen is those teensy cuts would be eliminated, but how much more would they need to raise it in order to do something about this?
I mean, it depends how much. If you want to fund the entire entitlement state that we have now without making any sorts of changes to it, we're talking about just really serious tax hikes. I mean, you can't do this by just raising taxes on the rich. There's going to be a broad-based tax hike where everybody's going to take your tax bill and hike it by 10, 20, 30%. At least to get this under control. But I mean, realistically speaking, I think benefits are going to have to come down too, and I think that will depend on the balance of power in terms of Republicans versus Democrats, and how big of a constituency there is for lower taxes versus preserving the benefits at their old levels.
10, 20, 30%? If you're already paying 30%, that sounds like 50 or 60%. Who hangs around for that? Who sticks around in America for that rather than just renouncing their citizenship and expatting their way on over to somebody else?
Well, I guess there'll be people who really like their Social Security.
So the ones who need it, because this is the conundrum. Am I right, Robert? The ones who need it, because I just did a story here. It was a story that I found that talked about how it's at Inc.com, and they talk about Americans needing to stop thinking about retirement, quote unquote, at 65, when you have some Americans have, like a huge chunk of Americans have 30 years to live after 65, 20 to 30 years. So you can't expect to be retired for a third of your lifetime. So what we have to do is have people ready to go into their third act, which is a job that may not be physically strenuous, but they're still earning money, because 80% of Americans have saved nothing. Only 10% of Americans have saved enough to actually support themselves in retirement after 65. Everyone else, the 10% have about 8,000 or so. And then the other 80% have zero, nothing. They have nothing saved. So how do people get to retire? How do we not, as a nation, just simply say, unless you're physically disabled, you cannot retire at 65 because there's just no money for you to retire on?
Yeah, I think raising the retirement age is going to be a necessary part of this. There's just no way to do it. I mean, as you said, people are spending so much time in retirement now relative to, back when Social Security started, the median age of death was, right around the point where you retired. It was people would live, it was sort of an end of life program where people would spend a few years on Social Security before they died. Whereas now it's an entire third act where the government is paying for you to live through Social Security. So I think raising the retirement age, where you start getting your benefits, is going to absolutely be a key to reforming the program.
So how do we sell that? Because in my mind, like if this were some kind of a family thing or a household thing or an organizational thing, yes, you have to ask. Yes, it would be something that Congress would have to pass, and then a whole bunch of people would probably be, not reelected or something like that. But I mean, that's not even statistically true. They have an 84% retention rate. So it's highly unlikely that they could actually get themselves voted out simply by saying, in 2020, we're raising the retirement age to 68. And then in 2024, we're raising it to 71 and, continuing to raise it up until it was in the mid 70s, unless you're disabled or unless you're physically unable to work. It seems like they would already have started that because they themselves we have a lot of people in Congress who are in their 60s and 70s and they still work.
Yeah. I mean, I think that really speaks to the problem here. Simply because we don't want to make these hard changes. We don't want to actually reform the problem. We don't want to be proactive about it and get this fixed now. We're going to just sort of headlong run right into the wall where we absolutely have to make the changes, and nobody will be able to blame Congress for doing it. It would be much better if people were willing to spend their political capital and do something hard now to fix it for generations going forward.
I know we didn't discuss this beforehand, but we have a caller. Would you be okay with us accepting a call for a question for you?
Sure.
Okay. We have John in Florida. Hey, John, thanks for calling Stacey on the Right. You're on with me and Robert VerBruggen. He's a deputy managing editor of National Review.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you for taking my call. I want to know why Robert keeps calling Social Security an entitlement. We have paid into it. Entitlements is welfare, food stamps, stuff like that. He needs to get his story straight.
Okay, thank you so much for calling in. That's one of the primary criticisms for when we discuss, Social Security. It's under the umbrella of entitlements, which also includes welfare and things like that. And people really take offense to that if they've worked their whole lives and have contributed to their own retirement. They don't like to hear it characterized in that way. Do you think there's a way that we could separate Social Security outside of the welfare state and kind of have those operate separately? I know they're together because they're government programs, but do you ever see that happening?
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, the term entitlement is just sort of a technical term for it. It just means that if you qualify for it, you're entitled to get it. It's not a moral judgment on the program. I mean, the thing is, though, that Social Security, you pay into it, but you don't get back what you pay in. I mean, most people are getting back much more than they pay in. So I think that, people who have this impression that they're just getting back what they paid in, that's not true. And I think that's a really big problem with the program, and then a big reason for its financial difficulties is that people are getting out a lot more than they put in.
Okay, could you explain that a little bit? Because I know that's true. I understand that. But how does that work? Is there a calculation? How has the government gotten to a place where, a person is putting in maybe $200,000 over the course of their life and they're getting out, $750,000? Is it that they're getting the amount out per year and then they outlive the end of it? Or is it that they're overpaying the government? I mean,
right. Well, what happens is that there's a formula that determines how much money you get after, based on what you put in. But the formula isn't calibrated for, a situation where you have people living so long after they join Social Security. So people are getting out a lot more than they put in on average.
Wait. So the calculation is that they take what you've put in and they give you, I don't think I'm understanding it. Like, I don't understand how they get to the place where they write you the check.
Formula. It depends on what age you retirement. What age you retire. There are actually different ages you can retire, and you'll get a different benefit depending on what age you retire. And it's based on how much you made and how much you contributed. But there's a formula that the Social Security actuaries handle that converts what you put in into what you get out. And the problem is that the formula wasn't designed to be. Basically wasn't designed for the situation that you're in, where people are collecting their benefits for many more years after they retire.
I see. Okay. I want to also go to your piece. So you have a piece up at National Review, nationalreview.com. I'll put this in the comments on the streams that we have going on right now for the listeners and viewers. There's something that you said in your piece that I think deserves highlighting as we get towards the end of the interview. You talk about, you say, I'd like to start out with a simple fact. We are probably not going to reduce the size of government. I'm not gloating when I say this. It disappoints me as a conservative. And then a little farther down, you take the Republicans to task for not being united in their effort to repeal Obamacare, which remains, it's like the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. It's still there, even though they came into office with a mandate to repeal it. So if I were to, encapsulate your article, what are you suggesting in here? What is your fix for this, other than waiting for the axe to fall and having that huge tax hike or collapse of the system or what have you?
Well, I think the real reform is going to come when there's an axe to fall. But what I suggest in the piece is that in the meantime, what we can do is look at all these different huge programs that we have and sort of look and see how we can apply conservative principles to them to make them better, how we can give people more choice, with their benefits, how we can devolve more power to the states and let them come up with innovative solutions for how these programs operate. Now, that's not going to solve the budget crisis because, at the end of the day, we're still spending a lot more money than we take in. But when we have, divided government, which, I think we're probably going to have next year, and Democrats aren't willing to go along with spending cuts, and even Republicans failed to pass any. I think that's the kind of thing that we need to be focusing on just to sort of minimize the damage.
I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see. I'm not pessimistic on divided government after November. I still think there's a chance that the conservatives can pull it out and not lose both houses. It might happen. Anything's possible, but I'm not willing to throw in the towel just yet. But I do think one of the things that could motivate people is if they were to have some kind of reform under their belt, if they could suddenly find some unity on repealing Obamacare before the midterms. I know that's a Herculean effort, but they could do that, and that would guarantee that they would remain in control, in my opinion. Or they could get infrastructure done, which that's more spending, though. But still, it dwarfs in comparison to the entitlements, or is that correct?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that it's fair to say that the Republicans probably aren't going to have another major success before November, but hopefully they'll prove me wrong.
I know. Robert, I'm so there with you. I wish they would prove us both wrong and have something done. It's not too late. If they would just stop going home on Wednesday night, they could probably get a whole lot done between now and November.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to put the link to your article. It's really good. I'm so glad that you wrote this, because sometimes the prescription for a problem is to first have a reality check. Then you can sit down and assess the damage. And we've been talking about this for years. I know you've been writing about it over at National Review. This is not your first merry-go-round on discussing entitlement reform and, reducing the size of government. These are all principles that have been strongly supported in the past. And I just wish we had like a group of people, not one, but a group of people with the stones to get it done. Robert VerBruggen, Deputy Managing Editor of National Review, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Talk again soon. And I know we have a caller, but we have like less than a minute left in the segment. So what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, the next caller on the line, please hold on through the break, and I'll come to you first when we get back. I also want to point everybody to the share buttons. Hit the heart button on the live stream on Periscope. Apparently, that is a metric that they track, and I think it helps get the live stream more exposure. So if you like what you're hearing, tap your screen. That makes little hearts show up, and I appreciate that. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube, please share the show. Share it so that we can get the exposure that will help other people to learn all of the cool stuff that we're doing here at Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. Yeah, that's the first segment. Woo! All right. Good stuff. We'll be back with more right after this.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
One of the toughest jobs in football is to be an offensive lineman, and nobody did that job better than Hall of Famer John Hannah. Some offensive guards excel at pass protection, shielding the quarterback from sacks. Others thrive at run blocking, opening up rushing lanes for their halfback. John Hannah could do both. Despite playing at the unsung position of offensive guard, his toughness and work ethic was the stuff of legend. And he received his recognition. A 1981 cover of Sports Illustrated was adorned with nothing but a picture of his face behind a face mask and the words, "The best offensive lineman of all time." John Hannah's dedication and tenacity was nothing if not uncommon.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Pastor Joseph Parker.
You know, obviously when things are going well, it's much easier to have an attitude of thanksgiving and praise to the Lord. But even when things are going difficult, it's important to know too, there's never a time it's inappropriate for us to thank and praise God. Now some may ask, well, what about when you're going through difficult times, when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death? We can have two different responses. We can worship or we can whine.
Tune in to the Hour of Intercession, weekday afternoons at 1 Central on Urban Family Talk.
I come to steal, kill, and to destroy. You belong to me. Your soul, your mind, and your body. You chose death over life. You are mine, forever and ever and ever.
Hell is real. Matthew chapter 25 verse 46 says there will be those who will receive eternal punishment in hell, but the righteous will have eternal life in heaven with our Savior Jesus Christ. Which will you choose? Let's go deeper at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Follow up if I can. Just since you brought up being taken out of context, it seems to be a press-related question. Are you trying to say that this administration is a champion of a free press?
I certainly think that, as I stated a moment ago, we support a free press, but we also support a fair press. And I think that those things should go hand in hand, and there's a certain responsibility by the press to report accurate information. I think a number of people, I'm not finished. I think a number of people in this room do that every single day. They do their very best to provide fair and accurate information. Certainly support that. And that's one of the reasons I'm standing here taking your questions, and a lot of times taking your questions in a tone that's completely unnecessary, unneeded, and frankly doesn't help further the conversation or help the American people get any more information in a better way, which is your job and my job, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Wow. So that's Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And of course, you know that voice. It's Jim Acosta of CNN. And he is jousting with her on freedom of the press, which isn't only the purview of the president of the United States. And so this is a continual problem that we see where people refuse to hold their own organizations accountable. Jim Acosta and some people on CNN, some of the reporters and journalists and hosts over there, there's been inaccuracy about the president. And there's a bias against him. So the question is, do these individuals feel as if this is acceptable? They didn't have the same bias against President Obama. So you don't have to like the president or accept his policies in order to report on him fairly. So to put the onus on the president as if he alone is responsible for the attitude that the American populace and many, many other people around the world have towards journalists actually ignores the fact that you're responsible for your own behavior. If you're found to be inaccurate repeatedly, then people are going to have less trust in you and your organization. That is not something that cannot be rectified. In fact, it can easily be rectified by simply acknowledging we were in error here, or we have displayed bias here, and our new intention is to go forward and reduce the level of bias that is displayed here. It's still the same people, but we're going to endeavor to be more forthright with the viewers. That kind of a statement coming out of CNN and then corresponding behavior, again, not to support the president, not to become Republicans, but to simply say, as a news organization, we have a responsibility to people, to our shareholders, to people who consume our work, to present it in a way that gives honor to the tradition of print journalism in America, which has, previous into our modern era, some of the biggest stories, the most insidious corruption, all kinds of different things, whether it was government or private individuals, corporations, you name it. Journalists were the ones who not only uncovered those stories, but rooted down to their very core and exposed horrors. They put them out in front of the public and said, this is what's happening in your country. What are you going to do about it? But not to say, oh, look, it's these horrible Republicans again, or, oh, look, the Democrats are, again, A pluses. That's not the purpose of the media. And so it would be so great. I know, maybe I'm wishing into the wind, but you've got Jim Acosta, who seems to be a very intelligent individual, but he's totally missed the point. So okay, I guess we'll just be there. I promised that we would get to the phones. And I'm hoping we still have Steve in Illinois. Thank you for calling Stacy on the Right.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi. Thanks for holding on.
Hi. Good. I told you whenever I'm off of work, I'll be listening to your show, and as promised, I'm listening to your show.
Thank you.
But this time I'm retired.
Oh, okay.
And I just retired here about a week ago. So you were talking about how the retirement is figured up. And what they do is they take your 35 highest years and then they divide it by the number of months that were in through the 35 years, and then that figures up how much your monthly benefit is. But you were talking about how Social Security has gone so wrong. Well, when Social Security first started, it was a private account. And that money went in for just you. And at the time, there were like 5 people working for every one that retired. So the Social Security could keep up. Well, now we've got maybe 2.5 people, maybe 2 people working to everyone that's retiring. And with all the baby boomers going, it can't keep up with it. But in the meantime, they have taken that private account and turned it into basically an open fund for them to dip into. And back during Bill Clinton took all the money out of Social Security, so when he left office, it looked like he had a surplus. So they've been dabbling around in the Social Security. It's free money for them. So that's basically where Social Security went wrong. Is it's been abused over the years. They've double dipped, triple dipped, and whatever dip they could come up with. But
Okay, so thank you for that historical outlook. And I'm pretty sure I've read that somewhere before, but I just, honestly, I just don't understand. To be honest with you, Steve, just to come in at the very visceral level, I don't understand how people aren't in jail. Because when you say it was a private account, it's one thing when you tell people, put your money into this government pot, everybody gets retirement out of it. That's one thing. But it's another thing when it was an individual account that you put your own money into, but the government was controlling it and they stole all the money out. And then now they're paying people, so you still have a guaranteed return, but now they're paying people and they're robbing Peter and by hook or by crook. That's theft. And so this is why people don't want the government in charge of 401ks. They don't want the government in charge of health care, because if you have a health savings account and the government's in charge of it, they could empty that out too. They have the ability to take from us that is so unfettered that it makes it almost impossible for me to understand. Like, I don't understand why people are so trusting of the government when they've shown us over and over and over again that they'll take what we have and then literally they just rob you and then they tell you, well, we'll take care of it later.
the contract. And in that contract, the contract is created by the government. And they can do with whatever they seem right, because what happens if it comes under the disguise of a law. See, they come up with this, okay, well, we're gonna vote on this, and if we can get enough people to vote on this, we can change how it works because it's a good reason. So that law is a good reason, so they can manipulate the thing how they want. And this protects them from actions. And I'm also learning that through the 11th Amendment, it gives them immunity from us people to be able to hold them accountable. I'm still studying on that right now to make heads or tails of it for sure. But what I'm coming up with now is they've figured the game out. They're protected under sovereign immunity from us. And if they get protected from us, their power is unlimited. And that's what we're trying to figure out now on how we put our power back and hold them accountable. So,
wow. So, first off, thank you for that. And it's a huge problem, and I think it's one that it's not that fun to talk about, to write about, to have on the show. You know what I mean? It's across the country, it gets mentioned obviously, and a lot of hosts cover it. But the problem is what you've just outlined means how do you get a Congress together that's willing to vote to undo their immunity so they're actually held accountable for the things that they do that are wrong? Well, I guess they'd have to be a Congress of fools, because as soon as that happened, we would immediately begin to hold them accountable, and then nobody would want to be in Congress. So it's kind of this weird catch-22 that only works in their favor and allows them to do what you've just described. Thank you so much for calling in. And also, thanks for listening on your day off, which is now you're retired. You have days off all the time. Are you enjoying that?
Well, I'm only working part-time now, so I'll have more time to listen. It's good to listen to you.
It's good to have you listening, and congratulations on your retirement, and also on still staying busy in kind of a third act, which we were talking about in that article from last week. And it was a interesting look into how things are going to work now that people are living so much longer. But it's nice to have some more free time to yourself and to get to really enjoy. So congratulations. Thank you, Steve, for calling in today. I just love it when we have a nice story like that. Congratulations to him for making it to that milestone. That's what we have now. There will be changes. And I find it kind of embarrassing, because what's going to happen is when Robert VerBruggen talks about this sudden change that's going to happen, like we're going to hit the wall, and at that point, everyone's going to have to tighten their belt and pay more in taxes, or maybe just say, I won't take Social Security. That might be what they do. They'll say, if you want Social Security, if you want to access the money you've put in, then you have to go to a new higher tax rate, and it's 10% for this group, 20% for this group, and 30% for that group. And people who opt out will lose everything they put in, but they won't have to pay the higher tax. Some Americans will go expat. They'll just say, I'm no longer an American citizen. I renounce my citizenship. And then they'll have other people who will become activists and try to, fix the system, but it'll be too late. No more borrowing. It'll just be, look, this is what it is. We have to end Social Security, or we have to raise taxes to this level. And that's when our kids or our grandkids are going to be looking at us and saying, why didn't you fix this? Like, you had all this time in the world to fix this and you did nothing. That is not going to be a good time for us as Americans. It's going to be embarrassing for those of us who, at that point, if it happens during my lifetime, I'm going to be supremely embarrassed that I wasn't able to get elected officials to do something about this. Okay, so I want to get to the story. So do you guys recall over and over and over again, we've been told that if you own a business, especially if your business is in the wedding industry, that you don't have the right to say you disagree on a biblical basis or a religious basis or a faith-based, closely held belief, that you don't want to participate in same-sex weddings. That does not apply to you, and you can be fined. You can lose your business. You can, in some states, they're even looking at ordinances where you can be thrown in jail. And we've always said as conservatives, that's not freedom of speech. So these cases have gone to the Supreme Court. There have been a number of different outcomes. Some of them are still waiting. We're still waiting to hear about the Baker. That case went before the Supreme Court. We're still waiting to hear what they're going to decide. So here's a case where the shoe goes on the other foot, and liberals are predictably in their double standards. Here's the story. You got this guy. Just describing him to you. He's a white guy, Greg Piatek, standing outside the Happiest Hour bar. He went in there to get a drink, and they told him, you can't get a drink here because you're a Trump supporter. We don't serve Trump supporters. Now, you know how it is. Some businesses say we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. I've seen that so many times. They also say no shirt, no shoes, no service. So you can't stroll in barefoot. The only place you don't see signs like that is like at the beach. You know what I mean? Like beach places you can stroll in and you can still get food. Well, this guy is not at the beach. He's in a cold weather place. There's snow on the ground in the photograph. He's in New York. A Manhattan judge ruled Wednesday that there's nothing outrageous about throwing the president's supporters out of bars because the law doesn't protect against political discrimination. So Philadelphia accountant Greg Piatek, he's 31 years old. He was bounced from a West Village watering hole in January of 2017, just after President Trump won, because he was wearing a MAGA cap. The guy said, anyone who supports Trump or believes in what you believe is not welcome here. You need to leave right now because we won't serve you. The Happiest Hour is the name of the bar. It's on West 10th Street. And they were complaining to the manager about the rude service that they were getting from the bartender. And he was like, get out. So he sued in Manhattan Supreme Court, claiming that his sense of being an American was offended. But on Wednesday, the bar's lawyer, Elizabeth Conway, pointed out that only religious, not political beliefs are protected under state and city discrimination laws. Supporting Trump is not a religion. Therefore, he could be thrown out. So he said the Make America Great Again hat was a part of his spiritual beliefs, and he was paying special tribute to the victims of 9/11. And they had, in fact, visited the memorial before they went to the bar, but he refused to remove his hat. And the judge didn't buy it. So they argued about it for nearly an hour before the judge. He took a break and came back and said that the plaintiff does not state any faith-based principle to which the hat relates. Here the claim that the plaintiff was not served and eventually escorted out of the bar because his perceived support for President Trump is not outrageous conduct. And Legary says he plans to appeal. So my problem with this is if he had a hat on that said love wins or same-sex marriage rocks or Planned Parenthood saves lives, he would have been served. Political expression is protected under the First Amendment. Maybe the lawyer argued it incorrectly, but the point is that ain't right. But it's a double standard. They should have happily served him because as liberals, their creed is tolerance until they break. That is what they're supposed to be doing, but they're not doing it. All right, when we get back, we'll have hour 2 of Stacey on the Right. Stay there.
Always stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team of One News Now. Use the One News Now mobile app. It neatly categorizes news and articles from the One News Now website in an easy-to-find format. You can read the stories, watch videos, and conveniently share any news story. It's now available for download from your phone's app store.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Senate has narrowly confirmed Mike Pompeo to be Secretary of State. The outgoing CIA director secured support from 57 senators, with 42 voting no and 1 senator absent. It's one of the slimmest margins for the job in recent history. Every past nominee since at least the Carter administration has received 85 or more yes votes, with the exception of Trump's first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. He got 56 yes votes. President Trump weighed in on news that Dr. Ronnie Jackson is withdrawing his name from consideration to head the Department of Veterans Affairs.
President Trump on Fox and Friends criticizing Montana Democratic Senator Jon Tester, who raised concerns about Dr. Ronnie Jackson and his nomination to lead the Department of Veterans Affairs.
For him to be doing this to this man and this family, I think Jon Tester has to have a big price to pay in Montana.
Tester is the ranking Democrat on the Veterans Affairs Committee, which had received anonymous allegations against Jackson, which included overprescribing drugs and excessive drinking. In a letter released by the White House, Dr. Jackson wrote, "The allegations against me are completely false and fabricated." At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
The summit will begin on the Korean Peninsula at the DMZ between North and South Korea today, marking the first time since the Korean War that a leader of the North has stepped foot on southern soil. Greg Palcott reports from Seoul.
It seems that South Korean President Moon will have his hands full. One part of the agenda, we are told, not completely worked out how exactly for the North to get rid of its nukes. There are about a half a dozen officials backing up the top guys on either side. For the South, that includes Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-wha. She tells us that there are many reasons that the talks have gotten to this point, but one big one, President Trump.
I think he clearly saw this as an immediate, the most challenging global security agenda, not just for the United States, but the whole world.
She added that President Trump's messaging has forced the North Korean leadership to change its calculations. We will see. In Seoul, South Korea, Greg Palcott, Fox News.
The California legislature is fast-tracking a bill that on its face bans counselors from helping people with unwanted same-sex attraction. But Steve Jordahl reports it goes even further than that.
Assembly Bill 2943 would ban advertising in any tangible goods or services for personal, family, or household use, offering or engaging in sexual orientation change efforts with an individual. In other words, if it offers the possibility of helping someone with unwanted same-sex attraction, it would be illegal in California. Pacific Justice Institute attorney Brad Dacus says it's already passed in the state assembly.
It looks like the state senate is going to likely pass this, and then it'll go to the governor's desk, and then it'll be up to Governor Jerry Brown to decide whether or not he chooses to respect the Constitution's First Amendment right of religious freedom.
Given Brown's respect of the Constitution when it comes to immigration issues, Dacus admits it's unlikely. He says it's a regressive fascist bill.
This legislation is so broad, it would ban books, actually ban books in the United States of America that have, say, testimonials of individuals who have been set free from same-sex desires or lifestyles.
And what best-selling book offers hope and change when it comes to sin?
I think the first case is going to deal with banning Bibles. No. But I do think that down the road, that is a part of the final endpoint agenda.
Surely he's exaggerating. Well, think again. This is Democrat Assemblyman Al Maritsusi arguing for the bill.
The faith community, like anyone else, needs to evolve with the times.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
Rising fuel costs are eating into airline profits, dampening expectations for the rest of 2018 and setting the stage for higher fares. American Airlines is blaming higher fuel prices for a 45% drop in first quarter profit to $186 million. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
AFA Action Alerts. When you subscribe, we'll notify you once or twice a week about a critical issue facing our country. AFA Action Alerts have been very successful in influencing legislation, as well as getting positive results from America's Fortune 500 companies. Subscribe to your AFA Action Alerts today. Together, we are making a difference. Go to afa.net and click on the Resources tab.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
A serial killer who eluded police for more than 4 decades may finally be behind bars.
We were able to get some discarded DNA, and we were able to confirm what we thought we already knew.
72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo, a former police officer, was arrested overnight after authorities say DNA in 2 1978 killings led them to him.
He's been called the East Side Rapist. He's been called the Visalia Ransacker, the original Night Stalker, and the Golden State Killer. Today, it's our pleasure to call him defendant.
The killer, they say, committed at least 12 murders, 45 rapes, and dozens of burglaries across the state in the 1970s and 80s. Victims ranged in age from 13 to 41, and he often took souvenirs like coins and jewelry. Police say the masked killer, armed with a gun, would break into homes while single women or couples were sleeping, sometimes tying up the man.
Saturday night, he pried open the back door and entered the bedroom of a 32-year-old Danville woman.
FBI agents could be seen gathering evidence at a Sacramento area home linked to D'Angelo as neighbors watched.
He's odd, keeps to himself, keeps late hours, but...
Well, it's a big relief because back when I was a child in Sacramento and this happened, it really affected our family. My dad went and bought a gun, and he would load it every night and put it under his pillow. The whole neighborhood was scared.
As for victims and their relatives, a measure of peace now.
Sleep better tonight. He isn't coming through the window.
Now, he is linked to more than 175 crimes between 1976 and 1986. Police say as they conducted surveillance on D'Angelo, they used discarded items to make that DNA match. D'Angelo was fired from the Auburn Police Department in 1979 after he was arrested for stealing from a drugstore.
So it's kind of amazing that this guy has been living right there, just like a regular person. They said he is introverted and kept to himself. Really quiet and unfriendly. But other than that, he's just been living in this neighborhood with these people for all these years, decades. And we don't even know if there are other crimes that have been committed that he did, that he used a different MO so that, you know, they weren't able to kind of add those to his tally. But this is quite a crime spree. So it is a blessing to have the Golden State Killer. And they're saying they've got him based on DNA. So they're pretty sure it's him. To have him off the streets finally, what a rampage! What a terrifically, it's kind of unfathomable that he was able to get away with that for as long as he was, and to have such a high level of crime that he was able to do all by himself. He just did it all by himself, just pure evil. It's just crazy pants. So. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Urban Family Talk. Share the show. Hit the like button. Share it on Instagram, Periscope, wherever you are and you're watching. Share the show. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm really happy to have you here. And we are more than halfway through the week and so much great stuff to talk about and topics to cover. Before I get to this, I promised you yesterday we'd talk about the Smallville actress. And by the way, you feel free to call in. It's 866-963-2037. Talk about any topic we've covered so far today or anything you have on your mind. I want to point out that I've been teasing this just a little bit. I had a few people wondering what I was doing, and I messaged back, what was I doing in Washington, D.C. again? How did I get invited to D.C. again? Whatever, how am I doing that? Well, I'm actually not doing that myself. This time I was there as co-chair of Project 21 with the president of National Center and my two co-chairs, and we attended a meeting in the East Wing of the White House to give a preview and first copies of our blueprint. And it's a better deal for Black America, and we believe that this is the best time for conservative reforms to take hold in inner cities specifically, but any place where Black Americans are not currently experiencing the American dream. And if you're wondering why it's specifically that, why that's the target, it's because demographically and statistically, the Black community is still lagging behind a significant portion of the people, not the entire Black community, but a significant portion of the Black community is still lagging behind on success measures. And so we've come up with a whole host of policy recommendations that we believe that the Trump administration can join with us on. And they really dovetail in with plans that are already in the works at certain agencies within the Trump administration. So we were able to go and meet with a couple of White House staffers who were pretty high up on the food chain, who agreed to take some time to sit with us, receive their paper copies, and to talk through just a few of the action items. And so that's what I was doing there. I'm happy to report that we will go back again for a second round of discussion, but we don't have an approval yet. So please don't take this to mean that we now have the approval of the Trump White House. We do not, but this is how you at least get in the space to have a conversation. We wrote it up, we created it, we've researched it. It's documented and supported by data, and we presented it to them. And we are prayerfully hoping for a positive reaction from them once they've had a chance to peruse it. So I'm excited about it. And I in no way, so I believe there's room for everyone. I've had few people reach out to me and say, what do I think of Candace Owens? I think she's fantastic. I think she's amazing. She's young, and she's speaking to a group of Americans who maybe don't want to listen to me, or maybe don't want to listen to some others who've been out there for a long time and have been doing this work. So I'm excited to see her come out and start talking. I don't agree with everything that she said, but I think she's got a firm foothold in a segment of American society. I'd love to see, the Christian aspect of it, but I don't know what her faith background is. And so, it's just great to see her out there. what she's doing at Turning Point USA, a group that the left likes to say is 100% white. Well, she's now in leadership there. She's now on staff in leadership there. That's fantastic. So when new faces come out, new people rise to prominence on the conservative stage or on the political stage, I'm always fascinated to see what they're going to do and happy to have them on board, because we need as many people talking about this and speaking to different groups as possible. I still maintain that there's one solution to all of the problems that face man, and that is Jesus Christ. I also maintain that one of the ways that we as Americans can render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, which is a biblical mandate, is to pay attention to politics. We don't let it rule our lives. We don't let it destroy our relationships. We don't allow it to be a divider, but we do tell the truth about it, and we use politics as a tool to accomplish our goals. So what I'm wanting to do is to see more Candace Owens, more Charlie Kirks. He's the head of TPUSA, more of them. So I'm glad they're out there. I don't know. I wonder, I do know, some women can be catty, and maybe people thought, oh, you maybe are not happy to see her because she's in her 20s and she's, on Fox now and all this other stuff. I don't have that problem. I don't. You know why? Because I know that. So let's go just for 1 second. You have to know who you are, right? So every single person is created for a purpose, and they are out in the world, and God has ordained a purpose for them and something for them to accomplish. And I know that for me, I'm walking in what God has for me to do, but I have certain priorities. So, certain individuals who are out doing things right now have different priorities, and certain individuals out there don't have the same plate full of responsibilities. I'm married. We have 3 kids. We also have an overweight little Maltese. He's so cute, and he's adorable, and he's a part of our family. And then I have other things that I'm doing. And then, of course, obviously, I'm here. So when I see other people stepping onto the stage and filling roles, that doesn't take anything away from me. Additionally to that, other people who they're not married yet, or they don't have kids and can do X, Y, and Z, and they can move and travel and what have you. I'm excited by that, because it's nice to see. And remember, I've not been doing this as my primary career. I was on active duty in the military, and then I was actually a professional. I was in the professional arena doing some work for a few years before we had our daughter. And then that's when I started being a stay-at-home mom. And then I started volunteering, and then I came to this. So it's been a process. And I've met so many women that oh my goodness, I remember one of them. I met her at a project that I was working on. I was working on a project for a company through an agency. And at that time, she had just become the VP of, I believe it was human resources. It was a really big time job for her at this company. And so she asked me into her office one day to talk, and we were sitting and chatting, and I was talking about some of my responsibilities, and she asked me about the ages of our kids. And I was working there part-time on this project. And so it was like the project has a beginning and an end, and I came in to work on the project for that specific project, and was over, it was over. She and I were talking, and she said, I think you're doing it right. Because I was saying, well, at the end of this, I don't have anything else. I'm going to go back to being with the kids all the time. And the kids were in school, but I was doing this during the day when they were in school. And she said, you're doing it right, because I stayed home and volunteered my kids' school and really didn't earn any money and do anything with my career the entire time my kids were at home. And then when they graduated, she said the last one graduated and went to college, and I went to college too. And she got a degree in human resources management. And then after that, started working for another company, and eventually transferred into the company where she and I were sitting and meeting. And she said at that point, her career just took off, and she didn't have anything to hold her back, because at night, it was just her and her husband. Her kids are all grown. They're out of the house. And by the time I sat down with her, her kids were actually off on their own, no longer in college at all. And so she was saying the way to get it done for you, because you've chosen to be a stay-at-home mom and to kind of only work when your kids are in school. She said, this is perfect, because you'll still be able to go on field trips and do stuff with them. And if that's what you really want to do, you won't have regrets. She said, for a lot of us women, our career begins when our kids leave home. And she said, you have so many decades after they leave home to develop and do whatever you want to do. And you never know what you might end up doing. And I remember thinking, wow, that's so nice of her. She's so positive. And I left there that day. They'd had a little, like an office kind of Christmas party, and everybody was giving, you know, those gifts they give. They're like gag gifts and stuff. And so I had this tiny little, it was like a little machine that makes drinks. I don't think that thing ever worked, but it was my little gift that day. I talked to her and then I left, and I didn't ever work there again. Didn't do any more projects with them. And I remember thinking how positive she was that I was going to do something amazing. She was like, I know you're going to do great things. And so it's just like at a moment like right now, earlier today, I was talking about the impact of Bridget Van Means, the head of Thrive here in St. Louis, and how she and I met years ago. I think it was back in 2009. Yeah, 2009, I think. And we were meeting and she was explaining what she was going to do with what was then the Pregnancy Resource Center. And now it is this huge, national organization with offices, coming online all across the country. And I remember thinking, this is like the most ambitious plan I've ever had laid out in front of me that wasn't like a part of a movie. Like, you see ambitious plans on movies. You never see one in person laid out in front of you. And I remember thinking, this is just so fantastic. Like, either she does this and it's like, this is a fire. It's not a fire. This is a nuclear bomb she's going to set off. And it's either going to wipe everything out and change the landscape forever, or it's going to burn out and there'll be nothing left, because this doesn't just go halfway. This is all of it or it's none of it. And it's been exactly that. It has been an amazing seismic shift in the pro-life movement that has emanated right here from St. Louis, and she's the one who did it. And so it's times like that I guess God uses those to remind me that, first of all, I had no idea I would ever be doing this, that I would sit behind a microphone, that I would go on television, that I would sit in the White House. It's humbling. I was sitting there and I just glanced around and I thought, Pinch, am I awake? Am I sitting in the White House presenting ideas for changes that, I believe would benefit other Americans? Am I doing that right now? Glory to God. I guess I am. I guess I'm sitting here with eminently impressive people. I'm sitting with these people. They're looking at me and expecting me to talk. Let me talk for a second. This happens. So I don't have room in a space like that for any kind of like, I don't want to see this person do that, or, oh no, look at her, she's getting huge and she's doing this or that. More power to all of it. So not just Candace Owens, but all of the people who do these things, the new voices and the old. I respect them all, because it takes a lot to step outside of your comfort zone and place yourself over the target, to be ridiculed and maligned for your beliefs, that's the position of anyone who wants to be on the right. The left, they're the popular kids. Us on the right, we're the nerds and geeks. But you know what they say. You always end up working for that nerd or geek, right? So anyway, so that's the answer to the question, what do I think about Candace Owens? I think she rocks. I'm glad to see her out there, and all of the others. We're all together on this. We just want to see better lives for Americans, and I want to see more people come to Christ. When we get back, we'll have more of the show for you. Stay right there. Stacey on the Right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. A couple of months ago, I told you about the Show Up Tour coming up to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon in September. And the Show Up Tour means all you got to do is show up to Washington, D.C., and we will take care of the rest. That is the Spiritual Heritage Tour in the fall, and we're almost sold out. You will love this tour if you've never been to our nation's capital. We're going to see it from a distinctively Christian perspective and a historically accurate perspective. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be joining us to give talks all along the way. We're also going to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown on a separate tour, just preceding the Washington, D.C. tour if you want to do both. So for all the information on the September Show Up Tour, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com.
Hello, I'm Pastor Joseph Parker, and this is Daily Time in the Word. It's our goal to help you better understand the great blessing of spending time in God's Word every single day. In the book of Psalms, Psalm 1 tells us these words, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper." That was verses 1 through 3 of Psalm 1. Again, words of wisdom and encouragement, encouraging each and every one of us as believers to get into God's Word each and every day. I want to share with you real briefly a few reasons why it's wise to read God's Word every single day. Number one, it tells you genuinely how to be saved and how to grow up in your faith. A second reason to read the Word daily is because it gives you clear guidance and direction for much of your life. A third reason to read the Word daily is because it empowers your prayer life. A fourth reason, reading God's Word daily sharpens your ability to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit more and more clearly in your life. 5, God's Word ministers to your mind, body, and spirit. 6, it helps you maintain your mental health. 7, it increases God's anointing in every part of your life. 8, it increases your wisdom in every part of life. 9, it enhances your intellect and your personality. And 10, it pours grace, peace, joy, and mercy into your spirit, your mind, and your life. And 11, in direct statement or in principle, it gives guidance and direction for every area of your life. If you're not reading God's Word each and every day, today is a great day to start that very, very important habit. Let's get into God's Word daily, and it'll bless you tremendously.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
We got a chance to see the memos that you wrote immediately after these, when they were released, detailing your interactions with President Trump. We first got word of these last year. You had asked a friend to share some of the details from at least one memo with the New York Times. I want to go to Evelyn Lawhorn, a senior studying government. Evelyn?
Hi, my question was, do you think that there's any credence to the president's claims that you broke the law when you released your memos?
I don't. Hope that won't surprise you. I don't. In fact, I think he's just making stuff up. The memos are actually two pieces, and the details matter because the facts matter and should matter even to the president. I sent one memo, unclassified then, still unclassified, and it's recounted in my book, to my friend Dan Richman and asked him to get the substance of it, but not the memo, out to the media. Separately, I wrote a bunch of memos about my interactions with President Trump, and I was what was called an original classification authority at the FBI, meaning I had the training and the authority to make decisions about what should be classified, what shouldn't. Some of those memos I decided should be classified. 4 others, I wrote them and was highly confident they should not be classified. Those 4, I kept a copy at the FBI and a copy in my personal safe at home. After I was fired, I put together a legal team of 3 people, one of whom was Professor Dan Richman at Columbia University. After I had asked him to give this information to the media, I separately gave my legal team 4 memos, which were unclassified. They included the one that he had gotten to give the substance of it to the New York Times. The bottom line is, I see no credible claim by any serious person that that violated the law. Here's a good thing, though. The Department of Justice is all about accountability. The Department of Justice Inspector General has taken a look at not whether I mishandled classified information, because that's frivolous, but whether I complied with policy as I should in making the memos and in the way I stored them.
Okay, so here we are again. James Comey then goes on to CNN, and he has this what's called town hall in front of a live audience, and Anderson Cooper actually shocked the extra grains of instant coffee out of me by actually asking him some difficult questions. And so you hear him there saying he shared memos that were not classified, but everyone knows that you have things that are created at work, and for certain relationships, specifically government employees, specifically FBI employees, all of his work product is owned by the FBI. The things he creates on the job are the property of the Federal Bureau of Investigations and, for federal record-keeping purposes, the United States government. So he's the head of the FBI. He gets to, with his training, he gets to make determinations of whether or not something's classified because he's had training and because he's the head of the FBI. But it doesn't mean that from on high, other individuals could not review the information that he has said is unclassified and classify it differently. He's not the end all of the thing. It's not like he's, the ruler over all classified things. So it was really interesting to me that he went to this place because it just doesn't make any sense that he would think it's okay, but he keeps explaining it over and over and over again. So either he looked it up and he found a way around a law that has clearly snagged so many people, and he basically, I let Hillary Clinton off the hook with it, and I will get away with it too, because this is how I'm going to do it. Now, I have another question, and I'm not sure who I should ask, but I do have an email out to try to find someone who can explain to me why his friend, who's a Columbia law professor, was maintaining a security clearance at that time. He said that his friend had a security clearance, and he was also an attorney, and he's also a professor, and he has friends at the New York Times, and so that's how he was able to get around that. But as I understand it from my training, and admittedly it was a while ago, if you have access to classified material and you maintain the security of that material, but you take information from said material and disseminate that, so in other words, you share some of the material, even though the parts you're sharing aren't classified, that's still a breach. At least that's what I understood. Because if that's not the case, then why do people get mad when leaks come out? If information that's not classified is leaked, why do White House officials get upset about it? Why was it a big scandal last year when all the leaks were happening during the first 6 months of the Trump administration? Why are they even called leaks? Why is it not just called sharing information? Don't take my word for it. Anderson Cooper asked him about the phrase nailed to the door, who coined it, and is James Comey a leaker? He actually asked him this to his face, which I thought was fascinating. It's number 5.
I don't think of it as a risk. You're making an educated judgment based on your training and your experience as to what's classified and what's not.
So, but you did leak memos. I mean, is it okay for somebody at the FBI to leak something, an internal document, even if it's not classified? Isn't that leaking?
Well, there's a whole lot wrong with your question, Anderson. First, I didn't leak memos. I asked a friend to communicate the substance of one unclassified memo.
Whether you...
Can I finish for a second?
Sure, okay.
One unclassified memo to the media, and I was really important. I was a private citizen. I was not an FBI employee at that time.
But it was an internal document. It was a document you had written while you were FBI director. That is a leak. I mean, if you tell somebody, don't give them the document, but tell them what's in the document, that's still a leak, no?
Well, not to get tangled up in it, I think of a leak as an unauthorized disclosure of classified information.
Really? That's it? That's a leak?
That's how I thought about it as FBI director. We investigated leaks, so unauthorized disclosures.
In your memo, when you said that when the president said he was eager to find leakers and would like to nail one to the door as a message,
I said that.
Shouldn't you be nailed to the door then? I mean, aren't you a leaker? I mean, you gave up a document that was released to the New York Times, information from that document released to the New York Times. I know you say it's not classified, but plenty of people leak non-classified information to reporters, and the White House and the FBI gets upset about it.
The FBI gets upset when people make unauthorized disclosures of protected information. There was nothing protected about this. It wasn't classified. It wasn't privileged.
So when you were
also,
FBI
hold on,
director,
it's also in my book.
I guess that's a good excuse for everybody. Oh, it's also in my book. He loves to say that. It's also in my book. It's also in my book. I've heard him say it so many times. I almost feel like just, so what? Who cares if you put it in your book? That means you're doubly guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. So he still doesn't get it that people are perturbed by the fact that the director of the FBI, that his primary consideration was that he should do something to precipitate the appointment of a special prosecutor. Even if he was this private citizen, the stigma remains. He was the head of the FBI before that. He did this as a revenge mechanism. Now he's out explaining that as if it's almost like someone who goes around slashing tires and you ask them, what have you done? I slashed the tires. Why? I felt like they needed to be slashed because of X. And they just explain it to you just like, what day is it? Thursday. What's the weather? 60 degrees. The same matter-of-fact manner that you disseminate that information, he's just like, yep, I leaked it. But I don't call it a leak. It's not a leak unless the information is classified. Well, tell that to all of the people who were on all of the different meetings where leaks occurred during the early parts of the Trump administration. And I mean, people got in trouble for that. People were let go. If what they leaked wasn't classified and it's not a big deal, then why are people getting fired for leaking information? I just don't understand. It's as if he's outside of what the regular rules are for everyone else. And he probably does think that. Let's be real here for a second. James Comey has not lived in an environment. It's been decades since he's had people holding him accountable. He has been in a position where he's revered and he's rich. He's extraordinarily wealthy. And he has these close associations with people in the halls of power. And you can tell by the way he explains things. It's almost like he's like, you're just not getting this. Let me tell you again. It's in my book. Not his book. His book. It's in my book. He keeps telling everyone that. Everyone that he interviews, I've already explained that to you. There's a problem with your question. In other words, you're not asking this correctly. I've told you what you need to know. You're just bringing up other questions that don't fit the narrative that I'm trying to share. Let me redirect you back around. And that works when everyone around you is your subordinate. But when you're on a TV interview like he was, Anderson Cooper just couldn't seem to nail him down. So call lines are open, 866-963-2037. I just found it fascinating. And I want to go to some of the comments. You know, we have a ton of different streams going on right now. Stardust over at YouTube is commenting, I'm sick of the Senate reps complaining about the Dems holding up everything. Newsflash, the Republicans could push through anything they wanted if they had a backbone. Yes, exactly. So if they wanted to, you know, do infrastructure or get rid of Obamacare, they could do it through a simple majority vote. They're not doing that because they're afraid they're going to lose in November and then they'll be subject to the same kind of mayhem. And that's just a symptom of them being not as strong as they should be. They should be stronger than this. I don't understand this at all, actually. But I've said that before on the show. You know. Oh, wait. Okay. So I was scheduled to go on CNN tonight, but apparently Bill Cosby verdict has come out. Let me get y'all that. That's fresh news. Oh no. Wow. He faces up to 30 years. He's been convicted of sexual assault. I'm not saying oh no because I'm okay with it. I'm saying oh no because he's, in my mind, Bill Cosby is the dad of the Cosby Show, not the real guy. He's like this. He's still living in my TV. And he really is because we have the entire box DVD set. This is so sad. So, breaking news. The jury in his sexual assault retrial found the disgraced comedian guilty after 14 hours of deliberation. He was convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constand in 2004. They found him guilty on all 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. Each charge carries a maximum penalty of 10 years. She was in court to hear the verdict read. Cosby did not react. The first trial ended in a mistrial with the jury declaring themselves hopelessly deadlocked after 53 hours of deliberation. So this is sad because it's the downfall of someone that Americans really viewed as America's dad. And there were so many cultural norms that the Cosby Show broke through. Really, the first show to represent affluent Blacks, well-educated Blacks, and what their home life was like. And a sizable family, you know, 5 kids, and a strong working mom who had a great education as well. And it's just so sad. Anyway, it's terrible to see him fall like that. In other news, I want to get to this before I'm going to move over to the Smallville actress. I want to cover that story, but it's so gross. Actually, we did already cover that story. That's not the one I want to get to. I want to get to, it's the premature baby, and that this is the indictment of single-payer health care. And that's what I want to get to. But first, we're going to talk about the Model T, the Deuce Coupe, the 32 Deuce Coupe, the Thunderbird, the Mustang. For much of the 150 15-year history of Ford Motor Company, they've been synonymously associated with sedans, cars. Now, Ford has announced that they're going to abandon the American car business almost entirely. In 2 years, a mere 10% of the vehicles rolling off of Ford's assembly lines and into North American showrooms will be sedans and sports cars like the Taurus or Mustang. The rest will be pickups, SUVs, and commercial vehicles. More lucrative models that the company hopes will secure its future as change tears through the global auto industry. Now, I have to say, when last year I'd gotten into a fender bender, and it was the height of the summer, and all of the rental car places that were affiliated with our insurance company, they only had sedans. So I had a tiny little crossover SUV for a week and a half, and then they offered me a sedan, and I paid the upcharge to keep the little crossover SUV because the sedans are so low to the ground, they're just hard to get in and out of when you're 6 feet 2 inches tall. And they also don't hold the same number of people because we have 5 people in our family. So I just was really disappointed that they couldn't accommodate my wish for an SUV or a minivan. But those are so highly in demand that if you don't reserve them well in advance, you can't get them. And so this is not surprising. I think obviously the trucks are more expensive than sedans, and the trucks and the SUVs carry more stuff. And even though they consume more gasoline, it's a trade-off that most people are willing to make. So this, what they call radical departure for Ford, has been years in the making because there's a fuel price shock that left Detroit on its knees during the Great Recession, but that hasn't lasted. And American consumers have gone right back to buying sport utility vehicles and big trucks like the bread and butter F-Series. So Ford ousted their chief executive officer last year and replaced him with Jim Hackett, a cost cutter who's prepared to make the sort of audacious gambles that Wall Street thinks have been missing. And this is no surprise. So it's actually interesting. Ford's shares rose 3.8%, the biggest intraday gain in 6 weeks. And they were up 3.3% to 1148 as of 3:16 p.m. in New York, so 2:16 p.m. Central Time. So fascinating story. All right, so you guys have heard about Charlie Gard. There's another little boy who the NHS is trying to kill because he's in a vegetative state, and his parents want him to be transported to Italy for advanced care. His name's Alfie. You'll see a lot of hashtags trending about him. Americans are interested in it because obviously the National Health Service of Great Britain really likes to tell parents that their kids have to die. This is not the first time. Obviously, this isn't even the second time, but these stories are beginning to gain national prominence more and more often as it becomes more and more apparent that in Great Britain, you do not have rights as a parent. You don't control your child. You don't even have the right to tell them what to do. So this premature baby was born before what they call the age of viability. And so instead of letting the mom nurse the baby and letting the baby pass on in her mother's arms, they took the baby, put the baby in a basket, and stuck it in what is the equivalent of a laundry/cleaning room, and left the baby in there, prematurely born, to cry itself to death. And now they're having a review and saying that they don't want people to judge them by this, but it is inhumane and devastating, and they should be judged by it. All right, when we get back, we'll have the last segment of the show, 866-963-2037. We'll be right back.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's Uncommon Moment.
One of the toughest jobs in football is to be an offensive lineman, and nobody did that job better than Hall of Famer John Hanna. Some offensive guards excel at pass protection, shielding the quarterback from sacks. Others thrive at run blocking, opening up rushing lanes for their halfback. John Hanna could do both. Despite playing at the unsung position of offensive guard, his toughness and work ethic was the stuff of legend. And he received his recognition. A 1981 cover of Sports Illustrated was adorned with nothing but a picture of his face behind a face mask and the words, "The best offensive lineman of all time." John Hanna's dedication and tenacity was nothing if not uncommon.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Listen to Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp.
I mean, did you hear that?
Pointed.
Remember that you're not only a Christian on Sunday.
And insightful.
Deception and lies have been accepted as the norm from the Democrats.
But most of all, she's on the right.
That scripture from the Bible, it says the heart of the fool inclines to the left, just kept popping into my mind.
Stacy on the Right. Now heard weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Central on Urban Family Talk.
When I hear the president saying, you know, you have to respect the flag, well, you kind of don't.
Stacy Washington.
So I respect the symbols of this nation. I would never burn a flag. I do believe that they're not sacred, but they are important to us in our national identity. He could say, I feel like I have to respect it, or I feel like I don't respect people who don't respect it. But to say that you have to is not exactly accurate.
Stacy on the Right. Weekday afternoons at 2 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
Yesterday was World Down Syndrome Day, and I'm still celebrating. Siblings of kids with Down syndrome were asked if it was tough having them in the family. Leah responded her sister was instrumental in equipping her for a future as a nurse. Gina said this about her brother: having Jackson in my life has made me a lot happier, and he has given me a more positive view of life. Jamie credits his sister with getting him out of his comfort zone. On many occasions, Rachel dragged him into conversations with total strangers. She was a family bonus. Victoria said it wasn't all that different, citing Amy's attendance in mainstream schools and college. Please visit lifeissues.org, where we have loads of resources and information on Down syndrome.
Like us on Facebook at Life Issues and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right.
So when you were FBI director, if somebody on your team had given a friend documents that they were writing that you were involved with and said, oh, you could just tell the New York Times what's in this document, you wouldn't have had a problem with that?
Well, depending on what was in the document.
But even if it's not
was it protected
classified?
information, was it investigative information, was it classified information, was it grand jury information?
So I guess I'm surprised that you only think leaks, officially a leak is something that's classified.
Yeah, the reason I hesitate is that's how I think about it as a lawyer and as the director of the FBI. In practice, the term gets applied to a broad range of things, so I totally get it. I intentionally gave this information to a friend, intending that it be out in the media. I wanted it to get out in the media.
Right.
As a private citizen, I could do that and did that, just as I've written about it in my book.
All right. The next question comes from Victoria Lopez. Victoria is she's a senior studying history. And by the way, I should also point out you're going to be co-teaching a course here at William and Mary in the fall.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Victoria?
Good evening. With the recent release of your memos, do you still think that you are suitable to teach a course on ethics and leadership?
So we don't have the answer that he gave to that, but I would answer no, he's not. And I just think it's funny that he just doesn't make any sense here. The fact that it's supposed to only be bad if the leaks are classified information or if it's somebody else doing the leaking, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think a lot of people are finding this problematic coming from James Comey. It's as if it's all falling down a little bit. It's kind of coming apart, his narrative about how he created these memos and he determined the classification on them without any outside, corroboration or support. Doesn't it feel as if he's kind of making this up himself and we have only his word to go on? And he's using his previous position as FBI director to support his claims. And I think it's interesting because one would say if he were a Republican and he were fired by a Democrat, the Democrats would say, hey, he was fired, so he has no credibility. So we don't care what he thinks about the classification of the memos. We want someone who's currently employed by the FBI to tell us whether or not these memos are truly classified and whether or not this information was leaked or shared or disseminated. You know, if you want to get caught up in the minutia of which of these words is more appropriate to describe the action that he took. I just don't understand it. All right, so we're going to circle back around to Colbert now. And this is a story that still has legs, obviously. And He says he thinks that Kanye West has lost his mind. Now, Kim Kardashian responded online before Colbert said this to these allegations that Kanye West somehow has some kind of mental illness. And so it's number 7.
I don't know if you've checked Twitter today, but right now my Twitter feed is just tweets from Donald Trump and Kanye West. Kanye is getting kind of political. He tweeted, "My MAGA hat is signed," followed by 30 fire emojis. Now, that is fitting, because that is how many times I would set that hat on fire. I think... Signed. Better than the side. I think Kanye's lobbying for a job as Trump's new communications director. He could just change his name to Kellyanne Kanye. But the height of Kanye's Trump praise has got to be when he tweeted, "You don't have to agree with Trump, but the mob can't make me not love him. We are both dragon energy. He is my brother. I love everyone. I don't agree with everything anyone does. That's what makes us individuals, and we have the right to independent thought." Yes, we have the right to independent thought, and I independently think that Kanye has lost his mind. You know what, Kanye? You know what? Donald Trump is your brother. It is true. I am your brother, too. And brother to brother, I just want to say, put the phone down.
So according to Colbert, if you're tweeting things that he disagrees with politically and you're perceived to be on the left, you should stop. No free speech for you. No hearing what you have to say. No getting interested in a discussion or something. No interplay needed. Just go ahead and be quiet, because the last thing we want to do right now is listen to you go on and on about how you like Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump Jr. actually tweeted out something that got a whole lot of negative attention. And he said, "It's always incredible to watch the cultural shift happen in real time. I respect those willing to take the lead, breaking with convention. That takes guts, though there's a better word for it." And then he has 2 basketball emojis, which is the symbol for baller, like basketball player who's really good at their work, slang. People are trying to act like he put the basketballs there because he's a racist and Kanye's black and all black people are associated with basketball. It's such a leap that it almost defies imagination, but yet here we are. So much going on online social media surrounding this story, all of these stories. Of course, I guess you guys have to have seen that Diamond and Silk were under oath, and they were, I guess, before Congress today. So this is like, again, surreal moments. Diamond and Silk have denied that they were paid by the Trump campaign, and Jessica Schladebeck says it's demonstrably false. They were paid. So according to a November 2016 receipt filed with the FEC, the Trump campaign paid them $1,274.94 for field consulting. And I guess Diamond and Silk say that they were reimbursed for airline tickets, so it wasn't a payment. This is something interesting that the left does when they start characterizing what's going on in relationships. They like to just take the simplest possible explanation, and then if you disagree, you're a liar. Remember, we've had Diamond and Silk on the program. I don't see why they would lie about being paid by the Trump administration if they were the Trump campaign. And they got pretty fiery in the hearing. So they were at the hearing today discussing their Facebook page and how they've been shut down. And so Ted Lieu said this is a stupid and ridiculous hearing. They appeared before a panel of lawmakers today discussing the filtering practices of Facebook. And of course, Ted Lieu thinks it's stupid and ridiculous because all he wants to talk about is impeaching the president. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat, New York, was asking them some pointed questions, entered the FEC documents into the record, and asked them, would you really be willing to dispute a filing made by the president that you so love? And they said, and their names are Lynette Hardaway and Rochelle Richardson. They basically shot back. He urged us to monetize our platform. You as an African American are not going to make us feel guilty because we're going to get out there and take advantage of these platforms and monetize just like everyone else does. I don't see you walking up to a white person to say, oh, you shouldn't be monetizing. He said, you are the most outspoken and loyal Trump supporters. And then he said, I respect your game. I don't think he respects it. So, of course, the president was on Fox and Friends this morning. He says they've become amazing, the Diamond Silk, the sisters, and that they're among the warriors who stand by him. So, you know, Facebook admitted that they sent that message to them and said it was an enforcement error. And I think it's part of the reason why they're getting so much attention is because he said that Facebook said they were unsafe, and that made it made it a national story. 2 black chicks talking about Donald Trump and being characterized as unsafe by leftist liberal Facebook. So anyway, okay. We'll go to the phones as we close out the show here. It's Lorenzo in California. Thanks for calling the show.
Hey, how you doing, Stacey?
Doing well.
All right. I just figured I'd call in and chat with you a little bit about the Kanye situation. I just started following you on YouTube maybe 3 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, welcome.
I'm neither liberal or conservative. I'm neither Democrat or Republican. I just look at Kanye as a brother who wants to bring people together, and he wants to present an image of oneness, but he's not in tune with the laws of nature, which sort of dictate that bluebirds fly with bluebirds and red birds fly with red birds. Black bears, hang out with black bears for a specific reason, and brown bears hang out with brown bears for a specific reason, all of these things come about because of the climate and the foods that we eat, Brown bears are lighter than black bears because they just didn't migrate around the equator. You got polar bears up in the north. Polar bear isn't going to go hang out with a black bear. And what Kanye is presenting to our community is a sense of oneness, which may or may not be achievable just based on the laws of nature. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the analogy that you're making is interesting, but when speaking about humans, the bear analogy kind of doesn't work because we have free will and choice, and bears are kind of acting off of instinct, but human beings operate on a higher level. We have mental faculties that enable us to group ourselves together based on interests. And so while we do have certain melanin differences, those differences are not material enough to prevent us from associating ourselves with others and based on any number of factors. And so what Kanye West is presenting with the whole unity angle, saying that everyone has a right to their own expression and their own free speech, he's presenting an idea that used to be fully accepted and widely the norm here in this country. It's only of late that we've seen this insistence that if you are permanently tanned or black, that you have to be a Democrat. And then anyone who steps outside of that has to be punished. And so I believe that's why we see so many, what I like to call undeclared Democrats, no offense to you, people who are, they don't want to associate with the Democrats. They don't really believe in it, but they know if there's just, I'm a Republican, then that means being ostracized by not just friends and coworkers and strangers, but family. Black families literally put people who are conservatives outside of the circle. You are no longer a fully operational functioning member of the family for some black families. And that is a shame, but it is the truth. And so most people make a calculation. Can I do without my family? Can I really stand to lose so many friends? And they decide they don't want to. And so they stay where they are. They may not really fully believe in the Democrats' platform, but they're not willing to let go of everything they have socially and relationally for politics. I think it's instructive that you talked about the habits of the bears, because there are certain things that human beings, certain habits that certain people groups engage in that really kind of make them anathema to one political party or the other. It's for me, I could never be a Democrat again. When I didn't have much life experience and I was operating off of the political views of my parents, but I can never be a Democrat at this point. It just doesn't work for our lifestyle or what we believe or who we are. And I think what Kanye is trying to do is just say there's validity in other people's opinions. It's not just one opinion that matters. And I hate that he's being whacked for it, but it's to be expected.
Are you okay with associating with white supremacists that align themselves with the Republican Party based out of the fear of annihilation? And I understand that, see, there's a decision that has to be made. You're either going to align yourself with homosexuals and liberals and all these terms, or you're going to align yourself with the rich white bigots on the other side,
Yeah, so are all of the Republicans who are in the Republican Party rich white bigots? Are they all, they all check those three boxes?
No, not all Republicans are bigots. Not all liberals are homosexuals. But what I'm saying is, in order for you to associate with either party, you have to be okay with the actions of that minority group within that subculture. Republicans, bigots align themselves with the Republican Party for a reason.
Are the only bigots, but
with the,
I understand what you're saying, but are the only bigots that exist? So every person who's bigoted towards minority groups is a Republican. Not there are no bigots on the left-hand side of the political aisle.
Both parties. We know this, from the teachings of Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad through Malcolm X's speeches and things of that nature. We know this.
Okay, so I hear the music, and I wish we could talk some more, but I have to say, we know for a fact that there are racists of every political stripe. The fact that they're not so vocal on the left doesn't mean that they don't exist there. I don't agree with racism. I don't associate with white supremacists. And that's really where I have to leave it. But I'll pick it back up tomorrow right here on Stacey on the Right. Thanks for calling the show today. And thanks for being with us. God bless and have a great night.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Being there is half the battle. 1milliondads.com exists to help Christian fathers to be present and intentional.